So before we get started today, adjust this a little bit here. Before we get started, I wanted to just make a couple quick announcements. We use here at our center a practice manual, the Awam practice manual it is called. And it has some basic kinds of things in it in terms of the initial parts of the practice, going through the nidro and so forth. And then it goes on and it's got a series of different texts for specific yidams for practice. And so a couple of things that I wanted to mention. First of all, there is a commentary available for that if you want to do that. And then also in addition to that, now we've also added a supplemental practice manual with additional forms of practice. And that is now available on our website as well. And so those are available. It's big, it's about 91 pages, but it's a PDF, so you can download it if you prefer. And then also I just completed a different one of my own practice. You know, I have my own variations in terms of how I do my daily practice. So what I've done is I've made a copy of that and then commentaries on all of it as well. And that too is now available on our website. So just wanted to let that know in case anybody is interested. So now let's go back to our actual practice here for today. And so we begin by taking a deep breath in slowly and then out, calming our mind and our body in profound peace. And then we recite the short refuge prayer. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent for the benefit of all sentient beings. I take refuge for the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent for the benefit of all sentient beings. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent for the benefit of all sentient beings. So last week we began with a brief introduction to the path of great perfection as well as the ethics related to that, which can get a little complicated. But today we are going to begin to examine various stages of meditation. So we begin with chapter 18 in the book and the second training on the path of great perfection, which is on meditation. So pages 275 to page 302 perhaps, okay? And so we begin here. The path of great perfection is the highest of the tantric, of the path of great perfection as well as ethics. Today we begin to examine the various stages of meditation. There's a variety of those, usually done in a sequence, but not always. The path of great perfection is the highest of the tantric yogas. It is a direct path. The practice itself becomes the preliminary practices for great perfection. In the great perfection, you have transcended all attachments as a part of that. And so in the practices that we've been doing up to that point have facilitated us in that way. And then here it is a certain degree of wildness and craziness is required. That comes from Dzogchen Rinpoche, his view of that. But I think he's kind of true. And then the current evidence appears to begin in the 10th century out of Mahayana, but may have influence from the Chinese Chuang tradition, which eventually then became the Zen, Japanese Zen. If your audio is off, please, or on, please turn it off so it doesn't cycle back through. Until fairly recently, the path of great perfection was considered to be a secret practice, passed only from the master to the disciple directly. It was a little known in even Tibet. Not very many people knew anything about these practices. New books are being published regularly now, however, and old texts are being translated. More qualified masters are becoming open in public meetings about it, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama has even, a few years ago, published 2 books on it. So different masters teach the tradition in slightly different ways that do not always agree. This evolved in the same way that Buddhism evolved from the teachings of the original sources of these, Shakyamuni Buddha and so forth. It went out, and over time it began to spread and so forth. And Dzogchen is no different than that. So we'll have things that may differ from things that you've seen from other sources, other books, and those kind of things, but that's just part of the tradition. The initiation for this consists of pointing out instructions. And so the nature of mind, primordial purity, this is the first described conceptually to the extent that words can describe the ineffable. So this is considered to be beyond words, and yet we're using words to try and describe it for you. Then methods are used to point it out experientially, which is the real key. It's not a conceptual kind of practice, it's an experiential practice. And then you practice to gain confidence in that experiential wisdom. There are 2 primary branches, each said to compete in itself, but usually practiced in sequence. And those are Trekcho and Togao. Trekcho is considered as a foundation practice without which Togao could not be of any benefit. Trekcho provides the context for Togao. Trekcho can be seen as a form of shamata, and Togao as a form of vipassana. They have relative comparisons in terms of those terms. Trekcho is divided into 3 parts: the view, the meditation, and the action. View is freedom from analytical mentality. Meditation is experiential knowledge from primal purity. Action is characterized by imperturbable relaxation. And the goal is natural expression of the Buddha's 3 modes. That would be the 3 kayas: Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. The view of this takes the cognitive understanding of the transcendent wisdom, and through pointing out instructions from the master is experienced directly by the practitioner. This is the great perfection initiation. And so the instructions may be given in a variety of ways, even in a sequence of increasingly ultimate perspectives. The most common expression is the representation of the gap, term that I use and some others use as well, between thoughts. So we have a thought, there's a gap, and then we have another thought. To point it out, the master may have a participant sit quietly and then shout the word "pei," and then creating a startle reflex for the participant, creating a gap in the thought process. That gap then is used to point out the true nature of mind. The mind without thoughts, or rigpa, pure awareness. Another approach that I sometimes use is called a bell meditation, which I learned from Lama Surya Das. The Lama rings a bell, and then you simply follow the sound into emptiness. This is also effective at creating a state of naturally aware emptiness as a part of this. It is basically ineffable. It's not language. It's just the sound of the bell. It's beyond words, descriptions, and concepts in that sense. So several other phrases have been used as a part of this. One of these phrases is openness. The direct experience has a feeling of openness, of vastness, if you will, emptiness, like clouds in the sky, or a cloudless sky in this case, or empty space. It has an incredible lightness about it. Another phrase is dynamic or spontaneous radiant display. This references thoughts in our mind or things in other phenomena. These are experiences of the innate energy of phenomena as lights or forms, the dance of pattern and randomness together. These are combined in a fourth phrase, oneness. Experientially, there is no difference between the vast openness and the dynamic radiant display. They are not mutually exclusive. These are, in fact, two qualities of the one, transcendent wisdom. Newborn babies do not differentiate themselves from their surroundings. They learn to do that. And that's a little bit like what we're doing here. We learn to do that. Duality and non-duality are but conceptual distinctions. Here, you view all phenomena with equality. There is no difference, particularly regarding good or bad. It is what it is. A perpetual awareness in this view is the union of the sacred outlook, lovingkindness, compassion, and the transcendent wisdom, the relative and ultimate truth. You've already learned that in the tantric writings, this is often referred to as pure view, viewing each sentient being as a Buddha, each sound as the voice of a Buddha, each thought as the innate nature of a Buddha. So we've seen those that's very similar to what we're talking about from the Buddhist, the view that we are talking about here in terms of great perfection. So there is nothing to do but to remain in the natural state and just let go and let be. How do we go about that, though? So this is the meditation part of this. So the state of relaxed awareness, remaining in the natural state, is one way of describing that. The primary danger is to relax without awareness. Awareness is what it's all about. And so if you just relax too much and you're out of it, you're not in the state of Rigpa. You begin by gathering yourself in a preparation for the meditation, abiding calmly, just relaxing. It's like when we started, we take a deep breath, let it go out very slowly and calmly. Repeat that typically 3 times, but depends on what it works. Maybe just 1 is enough. Other times it may take more than that to do it. Just relaxing and then discriminating awareness meditation heightens your discriminating awareness of the transcendent wisdom nature of things. You then relax into shamata without signs, no object as a focus, abiding softly into the vast openness of space. A state of relaxed awareness without thought. Just relax and surrender in the nature of reality as it is. You abide in pure awareness beyond concepts until the view dissolves as a concept and becomes direct Gnostic knowing, experiential knowledge. To extend your awareness, you may practice a form of dream yoga as you lie in bed, visualizing the syllable ah, white like a moon, floating a few feet above. Just let it dissolve and abide in awareness into your dream state. With practice, you remain aware during the dream state and eventually even the dreamless sleep. Now, you can be conscious, or can you be conscious in an unconscious state? Okay? By definition, that's not possible. But that's the way it is described as a part of this. But you can go back. We did the teachings on the dream states and so forth. You can go back and get some experience with that if you haven't done that already. With practice, then, the non-dual state becomes experiential. And that's the key as we get into these practices, is it's all about experience. Emptiness is form, form is emptiness, nakedness and delight. You experience a vibrant dance of the nature of reality, the primordial purity and radiant display of transcendent wisdom. And you abide in the view experientially, again, without thoughts. The great perfection yogin abides in the state of complete equanimity, mental calm, without attachment or judgment of thoughts or things. There is no self or ego through which to be attached. At the same time, the nature of bodhicitta includes lovingkindness and compassion. We don't give those up. They're still part of our view. Thus, you are detached and caring for the benefit of others. A state of bliss, an incredible lightness of being, if you will, naturally arises, but bliss is not the goal. Becoming attached to the feeling will distract you from the path of liberation. You abide naturally in the relaxed state, letting go and letting be. This requires that you have a good sense of humor, as well as an inspiration and determination. The masters are noted for their light-hearted, self-deprecating humor, and they laugh frequently, almost at anything. There's almost a mischievous sparkle in their eyes. They also possess remarkable presence. So now we go on into the action element here. The view and meditation leads to these actions. As you increase the frequency and time of meditation and maintain the meditative equipoise into daily living, you begin to transcend meditation at all. Ultimately, you maintain the view throughout the day and night. Awareness of your Buddha nature has permeated every fiber of your being. In the action phase of great perfection, everything is meditation. It's not something that we do follow specific guidelines. Everything is a part of it. All experiences that we have. Remember, everything is in our mind. All that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and so forth are in our mind. And that's where we see, recognize this as being in our mind. So you live and sleep in this view. Everything you think, say, or do is in the view. Liberation sparkles through the ground of being. In spontaneous self-perfection, everything is one taste. You have transcended practice and simply continue the non-dual pure awareness of every moment, like watching a movie, but not engaging in the story. The movie's just going on, but you're not engaged in that with any intensity at all. So the idea here is that non-conceptual awareness, without thoughts, ethics also transcend concepts. And we talked a little bit about that before in Tantra. There is no right or wrong good or bad. Prior causes still apply in actions, however, and so we need to be careful about that. Abiding in complete mental calm. It transcends pleasure and pain. You have gone beyond the conceptual dualism of everyday mind. You embody the ethical principles, and they are no longer something that you do. You directly experience the energy of emptiness and the manifestation of energy as form. We'll get to that in Toga. Any thoughts or feelings that occur are seen as energy of the transcendent wisdom, ornaments or manifestations of the natural state, our innate state, our mind itself. Pleasure and emotion are the path. In this sense, the stronger the better. Yet you remain unattached to these thoughts or feelings. So if we get attached to things, that was one of the things the Buddha himself warned us about. It's very easy to get attached to rituals and other kinds of practices. And that's a problem. So we need to be sure that we don't do that kind of thing. You neither cultivate nor reject them. They are perfect as they are. Letting them go and letting them be, they arise and dissolve on their own. When done with completion integration, you remain undisturbed by them. You become like a child, and there are no limitations. Everything is of one taste. The integration of passions into the practice is known as crazy wisdom. You may have heard that term before, and must be done within the state, though, of pure awareness. You don't just do these things. It's done within a particular view. Or it may be seriously detrimental to your development and practice. So there's a specific way that these things are done with effects. So we're going to look at some of that here momentarily. Decisiveness is the key. It gives you confidence in your actions. You realize the 4 attachments. These are 4 things that have been identified with this. The first one is to be able to do the opposite of what you consider to be right. You never delude in the natural state, or never right or wrong. It's beyond right or wrong. Act with mental calm, transcendent, beyond concepts of good and bad. They are just concepts, not a rejection of the actions. The third, do not be involved in actions or thoughts. Remain unattached, unaffected by them. And number 4, remain undiluted, unaffected by what others think, say, or do. And so, at the same time, Padmasambhava is noted for saying, my mind is vast as space, my actions are as fine as barley flour. And I think that's a very important principle to keep in mind as a part of that. Yes, we can do those things from an ultimate point of view, but in terms of our actual actions, our interactions with other individuals and so forth, that's totally not appropriate. We still have to follow the principles of ethics and so forth. So furthermore, you abide in the 3 capacities of understandings. No one can dissuade you from your nature. It just is. No one can make you afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. You do not follow good or bad as concepts. So it's beyond that, transcends that idea. And then finally, you experience the decision without action. The first one, activity cannot bring Buddhahood, just decide. Number 2, there are not obscurations or negativity in the natural state. In that state, there is no good or bad. You're out of that state, there's definitely good or bad. Everything is a reflection of wisdom, and it is self-liberated. Number 4, all existences are reflections of the natural state in your mind. And number 5, the natural state is beyond whether you understand it or not. So, let go and let be permeates our daily actions. There are no limits to your openness. You transcend the view as a concept and live it experientially, delighting in the dance, as some say, and laughing at, well, whatever. Your retreat is wherever you are. You sit anywhere. You are aware of whatever. There are no distractions. You have fully integrated your practice into everyday life. So ultimate and relative bodhicitta are considered to be one, not two separate versions of that. Loving kindness, compassion, and joy naturally manifest spontaneously in the incredible lightness of being and sacred outlook for the benefit of others. So you embody those. You don't have to conceptualize it. You realize the pure happiness of indestructible inner peace and joy. From the depths of the heart, that's a book, Padmasambhava gives this advice to Yeshe Tsogyal, slightly abbreviated form here. Because mind as such is fully awake from the very beginning, it is neither associated nor dissociated from Buddhahood. Recognize this without any conceptual elaboration is the view. Without any conceptual elaboration is the view. Okay, so that's very important. Remaining in a natural state is the meditation. Whatever Dharma practices one performs in that state is the activity. And self-emergent, spontaneous, and unborn direct insight is the result. So that was a view of Padmasambhava about these. So next, the text explains the preliminary practices of Korde Rushen. So this is another set of practices that are used in some cases, not all, prior to going into actual Trekcho practices. And so it's in the book. I'm going to just kind of highlight some of those things. And if you want to follow that and you want to do those practices, the information is sufficient in the book. You can follow that. And to do those practices, if you run across questions, feel free to write me an email and I'll be happy to do my best to explain it to you. So this is, as I was saying, not always taught. So I'll give a quick scan, but you need the study and practice. Then you can ask those questions. Some lamas teach this, some lamas don't. Quite a few of them don't, actually. My experience. So anyway, Korde Rushen means separation of samsara or delusion from nirvana, non-delusion. The term Rushen refers to isolation. These are the series of practices designed to help the yogin realize and directly experience the difference between samsara and nirvana by transforming the mind. That is our way of seeing the world. Another way to say it is we isolate our deluded perception from our true nature. So Korde Rushen is often referred to as the Great Perfection preliminary practices. The content of Korde Rushen varies from one source to another. I've kind of hinted at that previously. Divided into three sets of practices: the outer Rushen, inner Rushen, and secret Rushen. The latter is divided into isolation of body, speech, and mind. Padmasambhava did not include Korde Rushen practices in his text, one reason for leaving them out. So then the outer Rushen, the first of these, focuses on the separation or isolation of our delusion of self. We saw that in Tantra as well, from one or more of the 5 skandhas, specifically form, feelings, perceptions, and consciousness, helping to reveal our true nature as it is. So the view of it is a little bit different than in Tantra, but it's basically the same. And so the actual practice here, practice number 38 in the book, starts with practicing related to our setting up our intention, doing nundro, breath purification as before, and then I'm just going to highlight each of the steps. So the first skandha is form, and so here it's using the 5 elements as a part of this. So the first element is the earth, the second one is water, the third one is fire, the fourth one is air or wind, and the fifth one is space. And so there's a short, concise practice that is done with each of those in terms of recognizing them in a specific way. And then there's also a commentary briefly about post-meditation. So the second of these is about feelings, the second skandha. So using the 6 realms of cyclic existence here. So the first one is the hell realm associated with anger. The second one, the hungry ghost realm associated with greed. The third one is the animal realm, which is associated with delusion. The fourth one, the human realm, associated with passion. Number 5, the demigod realm, associated with jealousy. And the God realm, number 6, associated with pride or arrogance. So those are all part of that one element. The third skandha that's used for this purpose is based on perceptions. So we have 5 different senses. And so the first one, seeing, then hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. So there's a concise practice for each of those. In terms of the fourth skandha, its focus is on mental formations. And so thoughts, and the difference between a thought and no thought in this case. And so there's a brief description of how to go through that one. This one only has one. It doesn't have a whole set of things. And then finally, the fifth skandha is about consciousness itself. And so it's divided into 3 parts. So the first one is just self, practice related to that. The second one is other than self. And then the third one takes those 2 together, and we have self and other combined. And then there's a brief self meditation, that covers this at the end of all of that, and then a dedication as well. So then the second part of the Rushen is the inner Rushen, and this one is the one that shifts focus here to an afflictive emotions in the form of the 6 poisons, separating or isolating them from our true nature of mind. So that's the focus here. There's only one practice for the inner Rushen, but there's an expectation that you'll do a significant number of repetitions of it until you really master that. And so this is practice number 39 in the book, the inner Rushen, the Vajra recitation. And so again, it has an introduction, the Nundro, breath purification as before, and then the Vajra recitation is the visualization of the 6 seeds, the afflictive emotions in your normal body. Visualize each as a small dim orb of light. In the book, there's a short little picture. Let me go through the labels here and then I'll see if I can get the picture where you can see it here. The first one is, so here we're talking about our body and the different
elements and stages in terms of our 6 different realms there. The first one is at the crown in this case. And so that is the God realm associated with awe syllable. The second is at the throat, the jealous God, and this is jealousy and the su element. The third one is at the heart, and it's the human realm and the sense element of desires, lust, and so forth, and the light blue nri element. And then the fourth is the navel with the animal realm associated with delusion, and it has a dark red tree. And then the fifth one is the secret place, which is the hungry ghost realm associated with greed and the green prey. And then finally, the sixth one is there's 2 at the sole of each foot. And so these are associated with the hell realms and anger or hatred. And this is our 2 black 2s, one on each of those feet. So let's try to show you this. It's a small picture, and so it's going to be very hard to actually see it very well, but you can look in the book, you'll get a little better picture of it. So different elements and the places surrounded, goes down through the central channel. It's all abiding in there, similar to the practices that we did in Tantra. But the context of it and the meaning of it is different here. So the practice may be done one realm at a time of those 6, or you can do it by sequencing through all 7 of those. You do all 7 of them, but shorter each time that you do that. So there's different ways that you can do it depending on how much time that you have and so forth. So then part 3 here is associated with the secret Rushen. These are isolations. So the secret Rushen includes separate practices for the body, speech, and mind, and separating our ordinary body, speech, and mind from our Buddha body, speech, and mind. And so one for each of the body and mind, and 7 for speech as a part of this. And so that first one, the isolation of body, the Vajra body of Nirmanakaya, and then the symbolism of Vajra position. The upper part has 3 parts. This is like an image of a Vajra, but we do this in a standing position. And so our waist is the center, then the upper body is the other part, and then the lower body is the bottom part of the Vajra. And so we take our hands and put them up above, making the formation that we would have for that. And then we bend down with our knees pointed outward, not all the way, but we lower our body down. And so the knees are pointing out, so that makes a form like the body part, or the bottom part of the position, and the view of that. So we do all 3 of that, and it represents 3 prongs each one. The top has 3 prongs, the lower part has 3 prongs, and then there's 1 at the center. And so then the second part is the isolation of speech. These are practices that relate to energy, manifestation, or appearance of the Vajra speech of Sambhogakaya. And then the third part is isolation of the mind, which relates to the Vajra mind of Dharmakaya. It's an isolation of place. And so it's common for starting practices, and we often are said to go into a place of isolation. Most commonly, the Buddha talked about going into the forest. It's a very common one in his teachings, especially for starting out in the practices. and then mindfulness practices or the jhanas and so forth as a part of those. So you may have some experience. Hopefully you've had some experience doing those kind of things as well. So this is number 40 in the practice in the book, the body, speech, and mind. And again, it starts with intention, nindro, and breath purification as a part of that. And so in the first part 1, is the isolation of body, the practice, the purification, the Vajra pose, and the practice. And then the second part, which has the 7 different parts that we mentioned, is the external sealing, the internal sealing, training in flexibility to external appearances, and then training in flexibility with your own body. And then training in pliability is the blue hongs. And there's a variety of blue hongs that come and they vary around in the actual practice. And then there's a series related to Vajrapani, one of the wrathful yidam forms. Again, using those hong syllables as a part of the practice. And then number 7 is called entering the path. Welcome. And your body as a blazing white hong. So all 3 of those involve some use of the hong syllable in the practice. The third section of this, again, is isolation of the mind. And as I mentioned here, there's just one part to this. It's entering into your own innate stability. So you get down into what previously we referred to commonly as peace. And then, so by completing the Korde Rishin practices, you become a suitable vessel, and your body, speech, and mind will be transformed into the nature of the 3 Vajras. The important sign is to differentiate between the action itself and the experience of that action in your mind. So again, that was common in Tantra, but it's even more so at this level. Okay. So now the actual practice, go into that. The first one here is trekcho, cutting through. So trekcho means literally cutting through. This practice cuts through all thoughts and concepts that obscure our innate Buddha nature, allowing our true nature to radiate out in all of its luminosity. So the heart essence of this are the 3 statements of Garib Dorje. The first known great perfection is the human master. It summarizes the teachings in 3 points. The direct introduction in the view, the developing confidence in the view, and then adding in the view until, abiding in the view until fully awakening. So those 3, these represent the direct approach to Dzogchen. So the first step here comes from receiving the pointing out instructions as a part of these. They cannot be done through a written word. They depend on actions, on the Lama, and the direct experience of the student based on those actions. Descriptions are insufficient by themselves. This direct introduction is the first step. The second one, once you have the direct experience of the view, you develop a confidence in it through many short quality meditations. Similar to shamata, this is a process of habituation for which generation and completion stage practices have prepared you. So having done those other practices help you prepare for this. So the reason for not preaching this with Tantra preparation, so sometimes they skip over the Tantra aspect of this, but if they do that, they're missing some of the things that are important to prepare for this. The third step then is it indicates mastery of training the mind in the view. You remain undisturbed by other thoughts or actions. We abide in the Dharmakaya at all times. This does not mean that you don't ever have thoughts, but that you are able to have thoughts at the same time as abiding in Dharmakaya, both and. Similarly, you can engage in conversation and other actions while maintaining the view of Buddhahood in this lifetime. But first, we need to receive the pointing out instructions. So it has to be done directly, as a description does not have the same kind of an effect. The instructions may be given in a variety of ways, but the most common one is one we're going to look at right here. May or may not have had this previously, but we're going to go ahead and do it. It's very short. But the first thing, just again, take a deep breath, let it out, relax, and calm your mind. Hey! 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 So that's fairly common to do 3 different ones of those. As a part of that, it's sometimes referred to as creating a sudden expression, a kind of a jumping feel as a part of that. But if you didn't do that, that's a good sign too, as a part of that. So it's creating that gap, that sudden pick is said to create a gap then before you start thinking about other kind of things. So it's used to point out that the true nature of mind, mind without thoughts, or rigpa, or pure awareness. So another approach that I like is less abrupt, is kind of a bell meditation. Excuse me, reach this here. And so this one, you just simply follow the sound of the bell into emptiness, and you abide there as long as you can. This is also effective for creating a state of natural aware emptiness, and it can also be done by yourself. And it also tends to last a little bit longer than doing a pace. So as I mentioned, the pate tends to create a startle effect in people. Not everyone, but a lot of people, particularly if they haven't done this before. If any of you, now you've all just received that, but if any of those of you who are watching the video of this have not done this before, it is usually said to be done by an actual teacher at the time as opposed to just a recording of it. Some people take that one way or the other. So in the worst case, you can self-initiate, and you can do it with a bell yourself as a part of that. In some cases, they say you could shout the pate yourself, although it doesn't quite have the same effect when you don't know what's going to happen. So do it several times, perhaps different times during the day, until you get the feel of it. That, again, is the critical aspect in Dzogchen, is getting the feel of these things. So then next are the instructions for the 3 statements of Gerb Dorje. I mentioned those a little bit ago, but these are from His Holiness Khenchen Lama Rinpoche, my teachers and our spiritual director. These, I think, come from, not from Padmasambhava, forgetting the name, but it's divided into 3 parts here. And it's related to those 3 elements. So the first one, introducing directly the face of Rigpa itself. First, relax and release your mind, neither scattered nor non-concentrated, without thoughts. While resting in this even state, at ease, suddenly let out a mind-shattering pate, fierce, forceful, and abrupt, amazing. There is nothing there, transfixed in wonder, struck by wonder, and yet all is transparent and clear, fresh, pure, and sudden, so beyond description. Recognize this as the pure awareness of Dharmakaya. The first vital point is introducing directly the face of Rigpa itself. Number 2 then is deciding upon one thing and the one thing only. Then, whether in a state of movement or stillness, of anger or attachment, happiness or sorrow, all the time in any situation, recognize that Dharmakaya you recognized before in the mother and child clear light, already acquainted, will reunite, rest in the aspect of awareness beyond all description, stillness, bliss, and clarity. Disrupt them again and again, those 3, stillness, bliss, and clarity. Let go of them. Suddenly striking the syllables of skillful means and wisdom. With no difference between the meditation and post-meditation, no division between sessions and breaks, always remain in this indivisible state. So it's a continuous meditation. Everything becomes meditation. Always remain in this indivisible state. But until stability is attained, it is vital to meditate, away from all distractions and busyness, practicing in proper meditation sessions all the time in any situation, abide by the flow of what is only Dharmakaya, or truth body. Decide with absolute conviction that there is nothing other than this. The second vital point is decide upon the one thing and one thing only. The third one is the confidence directly in the liberation of rising thoughts. At that point, whether attachment or aversion, happiness or sorrow, all momentary thoughts, each and every one, upon recognition, leave not a trace behind. So the idea is you have to be aware continuously so you know when things appear, thoughts appear. That's the idea, the basic idea of these practices. So we recognize them and leave not a trace behind. For recognize the dharmakaya in which they are freed, as just a writing vanishes on water, arising the liberation, becoming natural and continuous, and whatever arises is food for the bare rigpa emptiness. Whatever stirs in the mind is the inner power of the Dharmakaya king. It's whatever stirs the Dharmakaya nature of mind. And so whatever stirs the mind is the inner power of the Dharmakaya king, leaving no trace and innately pure. What joy! The way things arise may be the same as before, but the difference lies in the way they are liberated. That is the key. Without this, meditation is but the path of delusion. When you have it, there's non-meditation, the state of Dharmakaya, the true nature of mind. The third vital point is confidence directly in the liberation of arising thoughts. And then there's a colophon to this as well. For the view which has the three vital points, meditation, the union of wisdom and love is accompanied by the action common to all the bodhisattvas. Were all the Buddhas of past, present, and future to confer no instruction, would they find greater than this, brought out as a treasure from the depths of the transcendental insight by the Turtan of Dharmakaya, the inner power of Rigpa, nothing like ordinary treasures of earth and stone, for this is the final testament of Garib Dorje. The essence of the wisdom mind of the three transmissions, it is entrusted to my heart principles, my heart disciples, sealed to be secret. It is profound in meaning my heart's words. In these words of my heart, the crucial key point. This crucial point, never hold it cheap. Never let its instructions slip away from you. This is the special teaching of the wise and glorious King. So having received the initial instructions, the first statement, continue on to focus on those as long as it takes to actualize that experience in your daily life. You should have clear experiential sense of pure awareness. That's very important. The ability to be aware itself. The focus is not on the dynamic radiant display, our perceptions of the world, but our mind itself. I sometimes compare it with the imagined experience of living life in a 3D movie. The dynamic radiant display is what's going on in your mind. And it is completely different than what we call ordinary mind. Once that is done, proceed to the second statement. Again, it can be a significant amount of time. Here you are seeking to attain stability in your meditative experience. Here you are seeking stability always and always. You are seeking to be continuously aware of your mind. The only real difference is that you move from moments of that experience to continuity. No matter what you are doing or when you are doing it, you get there through continuous reminders, habituating to this experience at all times. Stability is the key in this stage. It has to become a strong habit so that it rarely, if ever, slips from your experience of the world, but especially your mind. Finally, the third statement deals with embodiment. Here you are able to stabilize this even more. No matter what happens in your life, in your mind, you never lose your view or experience of the world as Rigpa, pure awareness of your mind, or profound peace. Let me give you another metaphor for the experience based on one described by the Buddha that may help you. After the initial experience, it is like watching a slow-moving river. Once you are comfortable with that, then it becomes like watching your mind, which is watching the slow-moving river. Later, it becomes like watching the slow-moving river of your mind, watching the slow-moving river. In this state, you become the slow-moving river of your mind and abide continuously in that mental calm, deep peace and complete contentment of the true nature of your mind. Everything is now perceived as being in your mind. When there is anything being perceived by your senses or thought train at all. This is the true abiding in Rigpa. Everything is experienced in your mind. Doesn't mean there aren't things out there, but our experience is always in our mind. It's just that we don't usually know that, don't recognize it. It may help to look back in your life for moments where you might have experienced this without knowing what was even going on, nor did you care. For example, recall sitting on a mountainside by yourself, looking across the valley of a large mountain, the stillness of the mountain and the stillness of your mind. You're just calm. Similarly, recall sitting on the edge maybe of a canyon, just experiencing the canyon and the river below, insects flying around in the sunlight, without thinking about it at all. Or perhaps you recall driving yourself to the coast on a hot summer day and found a quiet place away from others, then just watching and hearing the waves crashing into the rocks as the sun moved across the sky and down toward the water before you go back home. No thoughts, just observations. And feeling that deep peace so often articulated by the Buddha. Yep, back in that 3D bubble without thinking about it at all, just experiencing your mind. Another way is that I describe the experience of trekcho is more conceptual, but sometimes that's what we need. I describe my left hand as Rigpa, the ability to be aware, and my right hand as obstacles that we perceive in the world, though they need not be material in nature. Now, if I have Rigpa, the ability to be aware, but there are no objects to be aware of, there will be only complete nothing. On the other hand, if there are objects to be aware of, but have no ability to be aware, there will be only completely nothing. Only when both hands, the ability to be aware and objects that can be perceived, join with each other, does the ability to be aware become interdependent with the objects of our awareness, and we then become mentally aware. The Buddha referred to it as contact in the 12 links of dependent origination. Both are dependent upon the other and do not function otherwise. No mind. The experience of mental calm, deep peace, and complete contentment. So what I was referring to with the hands is we imagine one hand as being the object and the other one as the perception. Okay, so now we only have one of those. You can't perceive it, right? It's there, but you can't perceive it. You have no ability to do that. How about the other way around? Okay, now with this hand, it's the perception, but nothing to perceive. You can't do it there either. The only way it works if they're both there. They're both present, and you know that, okay? That's what we need to have as a part of being able to really understand what's being taught here. Okay. Looks like we are out of time. So I have a place marked here, this being a possible place to stop today. So I think we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll pick up from there next week as a part of this. And so continue in what we had set aside here, in the second training for the path of great perfection and the advanced Vipassana. We get into as a part of that as well. So let me know, again, if you have any questions, and I can email you or we can talk about them during class next week. In the meantime, abide softly and deeply with pure awareness, loving kindness and compassion for all beings, always and always. And more than ever, pray for peace. Thank you very much.